Walter Rodney, the man who challenged empire, a full biography and the lessons Africa still needs. Welcome, friends of African history, truth seekers, and builders of a new future. Today, we journey through the remarkable and courageous life of Dr. Walter Anthony Rodney, the historian, revolutionary, and Pan-African thinker who changed the way we understand Africa's past and present. He was a man who looked the empire in the eye and said, "You have built your wealth on the broken backs of my people." And for that truth, he paid the ultimate price. By the end of this video, you'll see why Rodney's message still matters today, how his book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, remains a map for Africa's economic and mental liberation, and what practical lessons every young African can take from his story. So if you're passionate about African freedom, development, and dignity, hit that subscribe button right now, give this video a thumbs up, and stay till the end, because we'll reveal how Rodney's blueprint for liberation can still reshape Africa's destiny today. Roots: early life and childhood. Walter Anthony Rodney was born on March 23, 1942, in Georgetown, British Guyana, today's Guyana, on South America's northern coast. He was the second of 5 children in a modest working-class Afro-Guyanese family. His parents, Edward and Pauline Rodney, valued education and discipline. They were not rich, but they were rich in principle, believers in the power of learning to break chains. Imagine the 1940s Caribbean, still a British colony where racial hierarchy and economic inequality ruled. Sugar plantations still dominated, and the descendants of enslaved Africans and indentured Indians lived side by side, struggling to find their footing in a colonial economy built to export wealth abroad. From his earliest years, young Walter learned to question authority. Teachers noticed his sharp intellect and fearless curiosity. He excelled at Queen's College, the top secondary school in Guyana, earning scholarships that opened the world to him. By the age of 23, Rodney had already marked himself as one of the brightest minds in the Caribbean. But even as he mastered the texts of European historians, he kept asking, "Where is Africa's voice in this story?" That question would define his life. The making of a scholar: Jamaica and London. In 1960, Rodney entered the University College of the West Indies at Mona, Jamaica, to study history. These were electric times. Across Africa and the Caribbean, nations were breaking the colonial yoke. Ghana in 1957, Nigeria in 1960, Tanganyika, Uganda, and more. Everywhere, the cry was freedom. Rodney joined student discussions that mix history with politics, culture, and music. The air buzzed with reggae, Rastafari philosophy, Marxist readings, and Pan-African dreams. He graduated first class in 1963, a rare honor, and won a scholarship to SOAS, the School of Oriental and African Studies at the University of London. There, in the imperial metropolis itself, Rodney studied the documents of empire and saw in the code statistics of the slave trade the hidden architecture of global inequality. He completed his PhD in record time, at just 24 years old, on A History of the Upper Guinea Coast, 1545 to 1800. But here's what set Rodney apart. He wasn't content to write for dusty archives. He wanted history to be a weapon in the hands of the oppressed. He once said, "The function of the scholar is not to interpret the world for the ruling class, but to transform it with the masses." That conviction shaped his next chapter. Africa Calls. The Dar es Salaam years. After London, Rodney traveled east to Tanzania to lecture at the University of Dar es Salaam, then a vibrant center of revolutionary thought under Julius Nyerere. Imagine the scene. Independence flags still fresh, students from all over Africa discussing socialism, liberation wars raging in Mozambique and Angola, and intellectuals from across the globe converging to design new paths for Africa. Rodney became a favorite lecturer, not because he preached ideology, but because he connected theory with people's everyday struggles. He went to villages, spoke in Kiswahili, lived simply, and worked alongside peasants. He saw in Tanzania the seeds of what he called self-reliant development, Africans defining their own priorities rather than importing Western blueprints. But he also saw the dangers, the creeping bureaucracy, the dependence on foreign aid, and the lingering colonial mindset in the new elites. These observations crystallized his global critique that Europe's dominance had been built on Africa's exploitation, and that unless Africa reversed those structures, political independence would remain empty. It was in Dar es Salaam that Rodney began to draft his masterpiece. The masterpiece, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Published in 1972, this book exploded like thunder across the global South. In classrooms, labor unions, and liberation camps, people found language to describe what they already felt in their bones. Let's unpack Rodney's central thesis in clear terms. Europe did not merely develop faster than Africa. Europe developed by underdeveloping Africa. Through slavery, colonialism, and economic dependency, Europe systematically drained Africa's human and material wealth, crippling its capacity for autonomous growth. The slave trade, stolen labor, stolen futures. Rodney traced how the transatlantic slave trade uprooted millions, bleeding the continent of its strongest workforce while enriching European merchants and planters. That human loss wasn't just moral, it was economic. Europe's capital accumulation was literally built on African bodies. Colonial re-engineering, economies of extraction. Colonialism, he argued, reorganized African production to serve Europe's factories. Railways, ports, and plantations weren't designed for Africans. They were designed to move raw materials out and manufactured goods in. Local industries withered, foreign monopolies flourished. Unequal exchange, the price trap. Rodney showed how trade terms kept Africa perpetually disadvantaged. 1 ton of cocoa or copper traded for a few manufactured goods worth many times more. This unequal exchange persists even today in the form of global commodity dependence. The psychological dimension. Rodney didn't stop at economics. He exposed how colonial education and religion implanted inferiority complexes, making Africans internalize dependency. True liberation, he said, requires mental decolonization. This was revolutionary scholarship written not in academic jargon but in clear militant prose. He wrote for students, workers, and peasants, not just professors. If you've ever read this book or plan to, drop a comment below telling us which chapter hit you hardest. The Return Home, Guyana and the WPA. Rodney returned to Guyana in 1974, full of hope to teach at the University of Guyana and contribute to his country's development. But Prime Minister Forbes Burnham saw him as a threat. Rodney's scholarship and popularity among the youth, trade unions, and ordinary citizens were too powerful. The government blocked his appointment. Rather than retreat, Rodney moved his classroom to the streets. He helped form the Working People's Alliance, WPA, a movement that united Afro and Indo-Guyanese workers across ethnic lines. Their message: fight corruption, ethnic division, and authoritarian rule. Build a democratic, socialist Guyana. He led teachings, public rallies, and open-air lectures, teaching economic history under mango trees and in village squares. To his supporters, he was the people's professor. To the regime, he was dangerous. By 1979, tensions boiled over. Rodney was arrested, accused of arson, and constantly harassed by security forces, yet he refused to flee. He believed that silence in the face of injustice was betrayal. The Assassination, June 13, 1980. That June evening, Rodney was in Georgetown with his brother, Donald Rodney. They were testing a walkie-talkie given to them by Gregory Smith, a man later identified as connected to the Guyanese military. When Walter pressed the device, it exploded, killing him instantly. He was only 38 years old. The news shocked the world. Students wept, trade unions marched, and intellectuals everywhere denounced the assassination. The Guyanese government denied involvement, but decades later, official commissions of inquiry confirmed that state agents were indeed implicated. Rodney joined the long list of martyrs who died for truth, from Patrice Lumumba to Steve Biko. Friends, if you believe people like Rodney deserve to be remembered, smash that like button right now and type "Justice for Rodney" in the comments. Let's keep his name alive. The man behind the mind. Family and values. Rodney married Patricia Rodney in 1965. Together they had 3 children, Shaka, Kanini, and Asha. They lived in Tanzania and Guyana, often under threat, yet their home was filled with laughter, books, and solidarity. Later, Patricia founded the Walter Rodney Foundation in Atlanta, preserving his legacy and supporting Pan-African education. He was not a distant intellectual. He cooked, played with his children, loved reggae, and believed that every person, no matter their class, could understand complex ideas if you respected their intelligence. That humility is what made him timeless.
Legacy and impact. Walter Rodney's ideas didn't die with him. His book is still studied in universities from Lagos to London, Accra to Kingston. It continues to shape African studies, development economics, and post-colonial theory. In the 1980s, liberation movements cited him. In the 1990s, scholars debated him. Today, in the 21st century, young Africans on social media are rediscovering him, connecting his insights to neo-colonial debt, resource exploitation, and youth unemployment. Rodney proved that knowledge is not neutral. Either it serves liberation or it reinforces domination. He also demonstrated the power of Pan-African unity, bridging Caribbean, African, and diaspora struggles into one shared narrative of freedom. The lessons. What Africa can do now. Let's translate Rodney's message into practical action for today's Africa. Lesson 1. Know your history. As Rodney wrote, a people who do not know their past will be easily deceived about their present. African education systems must prioritize African history from Mali to Congo, from Ethiopia to Benin, taught proudly and critically. Lesson 2. Build local industries. Rodney showed how exporting raw materials keeps us poor. Africa must move up the value chain, process its cocoa into chocolate, its bauxite into aluminum, its oil into petrol products. Lesson 3. Regional integration. No single African country can defeat global capital alone. Through AfCFTA, shared infrastructure, and collective bargaining, Africa can negotiate fairer trade terms. Lesson 4. Educate for liberation. Schools should not only train job seekers, but nurture thinkers, inventors, and citizens. Education must connect to community needs, not just foreign curricula. Lesson 5. Unity beyond ethnicity. Rodney's work in the WPA reminds us that ethnic politics is the graveyard of progress. Africans must organize by class and purpose, not tribe. Lesson 6.
courage, and integrity. Rodney stood for truth despite intimidation. Every generation needs people willing to speak truth to power. Journalists, teachers, artists, and citizens who refuse to be bought or silenced.
A message to Africa's youth. If Rodney were alive today, he'd be talking to you, the young African watching this video on your phone or laptop. He'd tell you, don't wait for foreign investors to define your worth. Build from within. Organize. Think critically. Educate yourself and others. Challenge injustice wherever you find it. You are the continuation of his struggle. So the question now is, will you pick up the torch? Type "I stand with Rodney" in the comment section if you believe Africa's future depends on reclaiming our history, our resources, and our dignity. And if this story inspires you, share it. Let your families, friends, classmates, and colleagues hear what real intellectual courage sounds like. Closing reflection. Walter Rodney lived only 38 years, but his ideas are eternal. He proved that a historian can be a freedom fighter, that words can shake empires, and that knowledge in the hands of the people is the strongest weapon of all. The struggle for African liberation is not a phase of history, he wrote. It is the permanent duty of all who value human freedom. So, let's honor him, not by mourning, but by moving. Let's read his works, discuss them, apply them, and live them. Drop a comment with your favorite quote or insight from Walter Rodney. I'll pin the most thoughtful one at the top. Together, we keep his flame burning. Together, we continue the work of reclaiming Africa's story. Walter Rodney did not just write how Europe underdeveloped Africa. He wrote a blueprint for African liberation. His words echo louder today than ever before, calling us to think, to act, and to reclaim our destiny as Africans. If you've been inspired by Rodney's life and vision, don't let this be the end of your journey. Let it be the beginning. In the description below, you'll find a link to the full playlist of Walter Rodney's masterpiece, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. Dive deeper into his revolutionary ideas chapter by chapter and discover how Europe's exploitation shaped our present and how Africa can rise beyond it. Listen, learn, and reflect, because understanding our past is the key to transforming our future. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what part of Walter Rodney's story moved you the most? And what do you think Africa must do to finally break free? Together, let's keep his spirit alive through knowledge, unity, and pride. Don't forget to click the link in the description below and continue the journey through How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. If you learned something powerful today, hit the like button, subscribe to AfriScope, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into Africa's hidden heroes and thinkers.